In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, we're going to be taking a look at the Undertaker Nightfarer. This is one of the two new classes added with the Forsaken Hollows DLC. In this video, we'll be covering her stats, skills, recommended relics, weapons to look out for, and how to use her effectively in your group. So if you're planning on taking the new DLC content or the base game with Undertaker, you're going to want to watch this video. The Undertaker is a frontline class mainly focused on melee with spellcasting as an optional secondary source of damage. Her abilities and stats make her one of a kind of like a frenzied barbarian, dealing huge amounts of burst damage in melee range while being somewhat squishy. If you enjoy the Spellblade playstyle of the Duchess but want a class focused on meteor damage like the Raider and incantations like the Revenant, then this new class will be absolutely for you. In group play, you function mostly as a rotating frontline DPS, weaving in and out of combat. You'll maul away at enemies with heavy weapons while tanking hits with high poise while your abilities are up, and then backing away once your resources are depleted to regenerate. With a mediocre health pool and lower stamina than most melee classes, timing and resource management are absolutely crucial when playing Undertaker. I highly recommend communication with your teammates if possible, since her ultimate relies on the usage of other ults in the game, and being able to ask teammates to ult at certain points can make your burst damage even more deadly. The Undertaker's main stats are Faith and Strength exclusively, both at A scaling. Her other stats are incredibly low, with Intelligence and Dexterity both at D scaling and Arcane at C. Because of her high strength scaling, you won't really want to move out of her comfort zone of heavy weapons. You want to keep out an eye for mainly hammers, great swords, great axes, and occasionally fists or colossal weapons. The A in Faith will scale up any incantation you can find on Seal, so ideally you would want a Seal in the early game for some damage, and optionally a Seal in the end game with good incantations for buffing yourself. Arcane being a C allows her to apply some status effect procs more easily, such as Bleed or Frostbite, which you may see on the occasional weapon drop. As for her core stats, the Undertaker is below average with a B for health, C for FP, and C for stamina. This means that her survivability is about average, being able to tank some damage outside of depths, but her resources are quite limited. The C and FP means you can't really adopt an incantation spamming playstyle with this class. At most, you'll have a Seal in the offhand giving buffs to yourself, but in an ideal run, you'll have a strong weapon that scales with Faith with an optional Seal in the left hand. The C in Stamina is pretty tough to get used to at first, since most of her combat will be melee based. However, being able to use her abilities properly can help manage that issue, which is one of the learning curves of this class. With that in mind, let's take a look at her skills. To start, let's go over the Undertaker's basic character skill, Trance. This skill can be summarized as an overall buff to your character that lasts 8 seconds and has a cooldown of 14 seconds after it ends. When you activate this skill, you get a stack of 10% bonus damage, significant damage negation and poise, a better sidestep dodge similar to the Duchess that has more iframes, and auto sprinting, which makes you dash without any stamina cost. Once you make a certain number of hits with your weapon while this skill is active, you'll also gain an additional 10% damage buff on top of the existing 10%, for the remaining duration of the ability. You can see how long you have left for the skill on the skill icon on the bottom of the screen, which will slowly deplete over time. You can cancel the skill by inputting it again to quickly reset it back to 0, and I recommend canceling the ability if you have the skill on but can't deal any damage, so you can begin recharging the cooldown more quickly. Similar to the Duchess, this skill has no startup animation and can be activated at literally any point in time, while walking, while attacking, while riposting, or even while being attacked or mid-grab animation. Additionally, when you activate this skill, you get a surge of stamina that fully replenishes your stamina bar, and this means you can activate the skill right after you do an attack chain that depletes all of your stamina, get back all of your stamina, and keep your attack chain going. Lastly, on the basic mechanic, there is also a way to empower this skill by holding down the character skill or pressing both L2 and R2 while holding triangle. You can consume your full ultimate gauge to get a further empowered trance buff. The buff will have the same effects as before, except now it lasts much longer at 15 seconds, and gives the Undertaker auto dodges for the full duration. So now with the basics and the nuances of this skill out of the way, let's talk about how you should actually be using this skill. Since it gives you a damage negation buff, good iframes, and an attack power buff, you've been making the most out of it by building to use a powerful melee weapon and skirting around enemies with your empowered dodge and additional movement speed. Outside the Deep of Night, the damage reduction you get from this skill is broken enough to let you tank 90% of the attacks in the game, and the poise you get allows you to stance through 90% of the attacks in the game. This means that for most trash mobs throughout the map, you can literally stand in front of them while they attack you, completely ignoring their attacks, and just spam R1. This is great for clearing out enemies fast, since you won't have to spend time dodging and weaving around. When against tougher enemies, you should use Trance as a way to initiate your combat, then disengage if necessary once it's finished. While activated, you should dodge attacks with your enhanced dodge and try to use the enhanced movement speed to get behind big enemies. In general, I recommend using this skill in any of the following scenarios. A huge attack is coming, and the damage negation from this skill would keep you from getting down. You're about to go ham in melee range. You ran out of stamina and are in range to attack an enemy. You're going to use your ultimate and you want the 10% bonus damage to it. When it comes to the empowered ultimate version of this skill that gives you auto dodges, I actually don't recommend using it that often because you miss out on all the damage that comes from using the ultimate normally, and your normal ultimate will only consume 2/3 of the ult bar, while empowered trance will use the full thing. The best use you can get out of this ability is actually for when you have a downed ally and you need to revive them, as this can help you avoid attacks while picking them up, and otherwise it's just mostly a defensive quirk that can be used as you see fit. Moving on to the ultimate art, this is a high mobility damaging art that launches the Undertaker towards a target up to a very long distance and deals a good chunk of damage while temporarily interrupting the enemy. From some testing in the sparring range, the damage values for the ultimate scale with player level, and at level 1 you will get 217 damage, level 5 359, level 10 473, and level 15 599. This damage may seem somewhat overwhelming at first, since bosses like the Tricephalos have 52,674 health in trios, but there is a more nuance to it. Firstly, all enemies in an AoE are hit with the ultimate on impact, and any enemies hit along the path also take full damage from the ult. That makes this ability a great built-in AoE for field enemies during the day and a good gap closer for bosses that tend to back away. Since you only spend 2/3 of the ultimate bar when using it, you can charge up the ultimate meter very quickly with the right relics, effectively making it a 60 to 30 second cooldown ability. Being able to dish out 600 damage every 60 seconds in an AoE while gap closing and putting a stagger effect on an enemy is absolutely cracked, and you should be using this ability basically whenever you can given this nature. You can also try to time it to stagger bosses out of important animations like a phase change. There's even more to this ultimate within the Undertaker's passive Confluence, so let's take a look at that. Confluence lets you recast your ultimate Loathsome Hex after another ally uses their ultimate art. When someone else in your party casts an ultimate, your ultimate gauge will glow purple for around 5 seconds, allowing you to cast your ultimate without using any of your ultimate gauge. Unfortunately, you can't use this recast to do an empowered trance, but it's still a very powerful passive given you can communicate ultimate usage with your teammates. If your whole team ults against the final boss at level 15, you'll dish out 1800 damage in 3 separate staggers on the boss, possibly up to 2000 damage, given any damage buffs from your trance or relics. It's simply fantastic burst damage, which you should always be on the lookout for opportunities to use, and you should be reminding your teammates to trigger their ultimates while you're in the field during the day to make areas go by faster. Keep in mind as well that you still have 5 seconds to recast your ultimate even if you're down, so if you're downed and you get picked up by a teammate's ultimate, you will have time to use your ultimate ability and get back into the fight very quickly. One last thing I want to note about Confluence is that there is one other way to trigger a recast of Loathsome Hex. If you perfectly dodge a grab attack from any enemy, you'll get a recast option. You can pair this with an empowered trance to auto-dodge grabs and get a guaranteed Loathsome Hex recast to make the most of your ultimate bar, but this will require game knowledge on what enemies will grab you and how many times they'll try to do so in quick succession. Moving on, let's take a look at the best weapons for Undertaker. Her starting weapon is the Undertaker's Hammer, a hammer with the weapon skill Prayerful Strike. Prayerful Strike is a charged overhead attack that deals extra holy damage to enemies and heals yourself and nearby allies if it successfully hits an enemy. Since you have high strength scaling, I recommend two-handing this from the get-go for a small bonus to your damage, as well as with any other weapon that you pick up that has strength scaling. As you progress into the run, you want to gravitate towards high strength scaling weapons, but with less focus on super heavy weapons like colossal weapons or colossal greatswords. The reason why is because this class has a relic buff and skill buff that boosts attack power on consecutive hits, so you usually want to be hitting things pretty fast. Using hammers is almost always the best option since she has a special moveset that makes her attack faster than other characters using hammers. However, there are a few heavier weapons that have fantastic weapon skills, which I would say outweigh the pros of successful attacks and attack power. In terms of specific weapons, there are quite a few picks which are solid for your runs. Starting with the early game blue weapons, you want to keep a lookout for basically any weapon with Sacred Blade or the following fists or hammers: Spiked Club, Morningstar, Varus Bouquet, Spike Kestis, and Starfist. For purples, there's a ton of solid picks to choose, including for Great Hammers, Envoy Longhorn, Cranial Vessel Candlestand, Beastclaw Great Hammer, or Devourer's Scepter. Or you can use any of the 4 black gargoyle weapons, which are the Gargoyle's Black Blade, Gargoyle's Black Blades, Gargoyle Great Axe, and Gargoyle's Black Halberd. You can also use the Coated Sword, which has S for Scaling and Faith. You can use the Godslayer Greatsword, Envoy's Horn, or for colossal weapons, Staff of the Avatar or Envoy's Greathorn, and finally the Cypheropoda for fist weapons. For yellow weapons, you also have a good array of choices. In my experience, the best weapon you can get for Undertaker is Marika's Hammer. With this weapon, you get yellow damage, scaling with Strength and Faith, her unique hammer moveset, and the Gold Breaker skill, which is a good gap-closing AoE of holy damage, which can throw enemies into the air. The weapon even has a passive power of the Queen, which creates holy shockwaves when you use charge attacks with the weapon normally. The next best weapons are probably Blasphemous Blade for the Taker's Flame skill, Malekith's Black Blade for Destined Death, and Sacred Relic Sword for the Wave of Gold skill. Other yellow weapons which aren't the best possible but are still solid for Undertakers are Sword of Night and Flame and Golden Order Greatsword. There are also a few seals which can work for the Undertaker. With a low FP pool, you usually just want to be on the lookout for buffing incantations to complement your melee playstyle, such as Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, or Protection of the Erd Tree. However, if you do find an Elden Stars incantation, you should probably pick it up since you can cast it about 6 times on an end-of-day boss if you have 2 Starlight Shards. However, you may find the weapon skill you end up with is more FP efficient for damage than incantations, so choose how you want to spend your FP wisely. For your other 4 weapon slots, there are a few passive effects which you'll still want to look out for. Additional damage negation buffs will be incredibly helpful for stacking negation while trance is activated, and the brand new melee attack power is perfect for melee heavy playstyle. Other good buff choices include physical attack power, any viable improved attack power passive, HP restoration upon attacks, reduced skill FP cost, and skill damage. For talismans, there are a few to look out for. Carrion Filigreed Crest, Warrior Jar Shard, Viridian Amber or Green Turtle Talisman, Bull Goat's Talisman, the Claw Talisman if you're using heavy weapons and using a jump attack playstyle, Faithful's Canvas Talisman if you're using incantations, and Godskin Swaddling Cloth if you're building for successive attacks. For relics, you get a fantastic green relic from the Undertaker questline, as well as a multicolored chalice with green, yellow, and multicolor slots. There are a ton more chalices you can unlock via the Small Jar Bazaar and signboard, so you can pick and choose the best chalice based on your best relics. To complete the Remembrance for the Undertaker, you must first complete a few expeditions to unlock chapters, kill the entire Round Table to Hold, and then get an objective to find the Scholar in the New Shifting Earth. After you complete that step, the last step is defeat Hailster, the Night Lord, and drop the Night Lord's finger in your consumable inventory before offering the Night Lord rune. In terms of specific relic stats you want to be on the lookout for, I highly recommend having a relic with partial HP restoration upon post-damage attacks, since you play super aggressively with the Undertaker and have high poise while trance is activated. There will be tons of opportunities to gain back a little health after tanking some damage if you have this relic on. However, keep in mind that in Deep of Night, this may not be as useful if you're at a level where everything one-shots you even with damage negation. The next basic stats are character skill cooldown, ultimate art auto charge, and defeating enemies fills more of the art gauge. Being able to spam trance faster gets you in and out of combat much more quickly, and having more ultimate usage means you'll have more opportunities for iframes, burst damage, and to stagger a boss. The Undertaker specific relic bonuses are generally decent, but the ones you want to look out for the most are the attack power bonuses. Namely, activating ultimate art increases attack power increased by landing the final blow of a chain attack, and physical attacks boosted while assist effect from incantation is active on self. Being able to stack attack power from successive attacks, trance, your ultimate, and incantations shoots your damage through the roof if you can manage the buffs in good timing. For Deep of Night relics, she can lean more into a caster with improved mind and faith, reduced strength, or a strength dex character with improved dexterity, reduced vigor and faith. You'll absolutely want to try and find the Depths relic executing Art Ready's character skill if possible, as that is by far one of the best buffs for the Undertaker. In terms of party composition, the Undertaker is quite flexible. As a frontliner with temporary buffs, she can survive attacks easily using her enhanced dodge, auto dodge, and damage negation and poise. You won't necessarily need a Raider or Guardian to take on aggro while you hit the boss from the back, and you can deal enough damage without relying on casters. I would recommend playing this class with the Scholar if possible to get more passive buffs from the Scholar's Analyze skill. Having at least one caster also helps her damage output. Besides that, there really isn't anything you need to look out for specifically if you're playing this class, but do note that if you do have 3 Undertakers in a group, you can all chain back-to-back ultimates for some very high burst damage. In summary, the Undertaker is probably the best melee class in the Nightreign roster right now, borrowing some of the damage negation and strength from Raider, while combining it with the spellcasting of Revenant to get this strength faith scaling melee monster. The value you get out of this class entirely depends on how well you can manage the timing of your trance, whether you can get the right weapons or seals, and mastering stamina management with her low stamina bar. It's not a cakewalk class like the Raider, but it will reward you with much better damage if you can work out how to play her correctly. So that wraps up our guide for the Undertaker and Elden Ring Nightreign. I hope you guys got something out of this video, and I hope you guys are enjoying the DLC. We are going to be doing a Scholar video tomorrow, but I want to know if you guys have any more tips for Undertakers out there, any playstyles that you found viable. What are you doing that's working on Undertaker? Leave a comment below and help other players out.